Chris Shubert back again with our latest edition of Zoom, where we zoom in on IT thought leaders. Our guest today is Nabeel Sherif from one of our newest suppliers, Terago. Now, Nabeel, tell us a little bit about yourself and that incredible title of Head Evangelist. That's not normally what I see on a business card nowadays.
Fair enough. So I joined Terago a couple of years ago, and my role here as head evangelist or cloud evangelist or chief evangelist and many of the various titles that get bandied around, depending who's yelling at me at the time. My role is basically to enable the art of the possible and to show sort of the technology and methodology and platform and really, sort of the very special set of offerings that Terago as a company has to offer. We're kind of uniquely positioned, not just in the Canadian marketplace, but really, I think, as a communications and managed services provider in a very sort of unique way compared to most of the people out there, with a real broad mix of cloud and co-location services, as well as our connectivity service. And as the world starts to move into 5G, we're probably one of the best positioned companies, definitely in our region, almost probably in the world, to capitalize on that.
Awesome. How did you come to Terago? And tell us a little bit. You've got an interesting background in that you're also an educator.
That's right. So I actually, they sometimes jokingly call me Professor Cloud, which is something I kind of laugh at a little bit. I came to Terago, before I was, aside from Terago, my other role that you've sort of referred to is I'm an instructor, and I run the Cloud Computing Education Program at the University of Toronto here in Toronto, Canada. It's kind of my baby. I actually wrote and developed the program with the university about 8 years ago. Started teaching it then, and since then we've built it up, and we brought in a series of different experts to run the program with it, to teach the program along with me. It's been a really great role. The nice thing about that role for me is that it gives me exposure, from the Terago side and from all of the other things I do professionally. I've got real exposure to what's going on in the business environment, but it also gives me access to great sort of research and upcoming ideas and sort of disruptive new processes that are coming out of both academia and just out of young people who I get to teach. So it's a really great way to sort of keep up on what's coming up ahead. And something that's useful for me is I try to sort of communicate that out to both my colleagues and the marketplace and our customers in general.
Awesome. Do you ever encourage your students to get into telecommunications, or do you tell them wisely to stay the heck out?
Every semester, I've got at least 2 students who either at the beginning of the class or as they go through the class and learn more, decide that they want to make a change.
Wow.
Yeah, so every semester I've got a couple of people who are coming to me and asking me for career advice or what should I do? How can I make things more interesting or move to that next level of skill or get to the next technologies that are really going to matter? No, I mean, I love this industry. I think if you are somebody who likes a fast pace, this is the world where things change the fastest and where you can capitalize on that change the most.
Awesome. So let's dig into Terago a little bit. Brand new supplier to our portfolio, and CNSG does not add a ton of suppliers. So bringing you on, we had a pre-existing relationship with a channel legend in Blake Wetzel, who is now working over at Terago. But it's really easy to look at Terago and go, it's Canada. But it's more than just selling a couple of Canadian fiber circuits, which a lot of carriers that specialize in a country, it's we can give you fiber or we can give you cable. But Terago is much more than that. Tell us a little bit about Terago's product offering and the depth of it in the Canadian marketplace.
Well, and thanks. I think that's really one of the biggest things that we bring to the table. Unlike most players, certainly in the Canadian marketplace, we've got a breadth of services and a philosophy that is kind of different than most of the providers here. And in the Canadian marketplace, ICT services tend to be dominated sort of by the telcos. So the local telco carriers here tend to own the circuits. They tend to own the data centers and the cloud services and managed services that most businesses do. There's obviously an ecosystem of other providers around there, but it's a very telco-dominated culture. And as a result, it's also very regionalized. So that's one of the things that we offer that's very different is we offer sort of a national focus. We're not a regional telecom provider. We're not Bell in the West or TELUS in the West or Bell in the East, for those of you who are familiar with Canada. We work across all of those regions. From a connectivity perspective, that's something that we offer that's very different. One of the most compelling things, and I'll probably get into that a little bit later if we want to discuss it, is we're also the best positioned company, in my opinion, for the advent of 5G as it comes to Canada. 5G is kind of still an upcoming technology, I think, in the world, but definitely still here in North America. As it's being defined, as the services and technology is being finalized, and as we start moving into deployment over the next couple of years across the world and definitely in North America, we're the best positioned company in Canada to take advantage of it. We actually hold about 90% of the 5G spectrum licenses that are available across the Canadian territory.
That's a unique statement. I want to kind of highlight that for many in the telecom space. We're all familiar with folks that own versus folks that resell. And of course, there's a big argument for a lot of aggregation services where it's all type 2 resold services. In the cellular world, we have a ton of providers that ultimately aggregate or resell AT&T or T-Mobile or Verizon here in the States. But you guys actually own that spectrum. That's incredibly unique in the marketplace. And what kind of advantages does that give Terago in terms of your speed of deployment with 5G?
Well, and before we even get to 5G, 5G is still on its way.
Sure.
Right now, we're still doing licensed wireless across the spectrum that we've got to provide up to gigabit enterprise class connectivity that's completely independent from the fiber network or the telco networks that are here, and can also be deployed much more quickly because it's a wireless solution. It's a line of sight wireless solution. So right now, we are, I would say, the redundant carrier of choice. We are truly diverse in a way that nobody else can be diverse. All of the carriers essentially do connect at some point on the terrestrial network. We offer both terrestrial network and this other offering. So we can provide real, true redundancy. As we move into 5G, though, because we've got the license, we've got the ability to deploy and build out markets much faster than anybody else. Once we move into that technology.
Awesome. So in terms of all the different access methods, what all does Terago have access to? Obviously, got fiber, check. We have 5G, check. What's the rest of the product line look like? Because it almost sounds, we're always trying to simplify things and put people in boxes, but it almost sounds like almost like an AT&T style for Canada in terms of you can do a little bit of everything.
Well, I'd like to think we can do a little bit of everything, and that's actually, to that point, connectivity is really just one of the pieces. I remember one time before I started working at Terago, I was talking about Terago to somebody, and one of my colleagues made a very limited, very simple but powerful statement. They said, "Oh, I know Terago. They're the cloud provider with their own network." And anybody who spends time doing cloud work knows that network is the gotcha factor in building out any IT workload in the cloud.
Of course.
Because we've got that integrated approach, and we've got a multi-cloud approach. We've got our own private cloud services, our own public cloud services, as well as being a partner with the hyperscalers out there. We're a partner with both Azure and AWS. One of the things that you'll find, especially in our marketplace, is that carriers or providers tend to pick what I sort of call philosophical or religious battles around cloud technology. What I mean by that is, generally speaking, people tend to focus on one type of stack. So you might be a VMware shop, or you might be an OpenStack shop, or you might be a hyperscale partner shop. The reality of the way that people use cloud, and the research that I've got really backs this up, just go back to the academic part for a second, is that that's not the way people really use cloud. It's part of people's cloud journey to move something into a cloud. And then they move more stuff into a cloud. or into some sort of infrastructure in general. And that's why we've got co-location as well, because sometimes cloud is not always the right choice. As people move those workloads into one stack, what they'll discover is not everything belongs in the same stack. Generally speaking, the providers up here pick that religious battle where they'll try to shoehorn everything into one stack and show you that they can make things work in one architecture, the architecture that they've got. We've chosen multiple architectures, and rather than picking that battle as the place where we unify, we've created a methodology and a hybrid IT platform that allows us to put the right workloads in the right place and then give you a management framework across which we can put things in the right place and manage them as if it's all one unified work process, which it is to your business. So that's one of the things that we bring that's really different. It's not just about the network. The network is a critical part because it drives so much cost in today's modern IT environment. But it's also about the fact that we've got co-location. We've got multiple cloud services. We've got the managed services that you need around those so that they're easy to utilize, or so that we can actually help as a provider bridge the gaps in your skill sets or in your resource sets to make sure that you're utilizing them in the best way. And what's most important at the end is that as a company, because we've got this broad philosophy of understanding the different technologies and building a methodology to use these technologies together, we can do what you need to do right now, however broad or different that might be. We're not going to shoehorn you. But we've also got the knowledge and the experience from all of these different broad sets of technologies that we use, from all of these different methodologies that we've figured out along the way, to tell you what you should do next and to show you how it's actually going to matter to your business. So I think that's really what Terago brings to the table.
Fantastic. Looking to Canada, for our partners in the U.S. that have never actively prospected or gone to the Canadian market, what is the Canadian market like for them? And also, for as a follow-up to that, why did Terago decide to partner with CNSG to attack the Americas? So
this is where it gets really interesting. I'm going to take my glasses off for this part and look closer into the screen. This is where I get animated. The Canadian marketplace, and I know let me be a little bit more blunt than you were, Chris. I think it's a good question to ask. Why would people bother with a Canadian provider and with the Canadian market in general? Your big U.S. companies, the U.S. is 10 times the size of Canada. So why bother with us? Well, there's a few things that are really interesting in the Canadian marketplace that make it easy for experienced, well-skilled U.S. providers to offer something different than what we've seen in the marketplace. I've told you a little bit about how things work up here. It's a very sort of regionalized kind of market, mostly telco dominated. The conversations tend to happen in a very sort of transactional way. You're talking with the IT director or the IT manager, and they need to order an additional 10 megs of connectivity, or they need a bunch of firewalls, and it's very transactional. There's not a real understanding of how that translates into the business, or how we can meet needs in a different and or better way, given the knowledge and experience that we've got to offer our different clients out there. That's something that businesses like CNSG and CNSG partners really understand. You understand how to marry the technology to the business outcome, and to have that conversation in a way that's really meaningful to not only the technology people, but to the business people, and to really answer that question that I care about anytime anyone's giving me a presentation. And that question is, so what? It's really important. So that's something that's really different in the Canadian marketplace, and I think a place where an experienced provider like CNSG or a CNSG partner can offer something unique in terms of changing the conversation. The other thing that's really compelling about the Canadian marketplace is that it's a little bit laggard compared to the American marketplace, much less competitive from a channel perspective, and actually growing at a faster rate percentage-wise than the US. So if you think about that, that means that you can come up here with the products, services, and solutions that you've already been working with your American customers in the States. You already know how to execute on them, and they're going to be compelling to us because we're about 3 to 5 years behind on cloud adoption compared to other markets like the American market. People here are still experiencing cloud migration for the first time and doing that initial sort of optimization and figuring out how to manage workloads across software as a service and infrastructure as a service. That's probably something that most of you have already been doing for your customers for at least 4 years in the States. You can come up and bring that exact same message and that exact same methodology, and you don't have to rebake or redevelop anything. Aside from maybe putting some U's in our words like color and flavor, you don't really need to do too much to bring that message up here and to make it really compelling to us. I've also mentioned that it's a much less competitive space up here in terms of the channel. The channel market here is very small. Due to the way that the telcos worked up here, there was a channel market here about 15, 20 years ago, but it never really took, and it's a very unsaturated market. People who can come up here and speak to the channel and offer a unique solution and speak in the language that we've talked about, that's that experience that you have from the U.S. market, it's much less. You've got a lot less competition to deal with. And lastly, we are growing at a larger rate. I think the rate of ICT spending growth in the States is about 6 to 8%. It's about 10 to 12% here.
Wow.
Almost twice as much. So, we're 1/10 the size, but you've got to work a lot less hard. You've got to compete a lot less viciously. And you've got something that people already need up here. It's a great place to work. Considering the amount of American businesses, especially in retail and logistics, that are seeing Canada as the next stop for them to expand their business, it's also really possible for partners like you to leverage your existing relationships with those providers and say, hey, I can be your Canadian provider. Most of the time when American or global companies build a presence in Canada, and they build up a few different branches in different provinces or in different cities, they do it very ad hoc. There's no unified strategy there. That's a place where there's a lot of value to be offered as well. So I think that's really, hopefully that paints an enticing picture of what's going on here. We're a really sort of tech-savvy market who needs help from people who are more experienced than us. I don't mean me. I kind of get this stuff at this point, but I mean our market in general.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a heck of an opportunity, especially for those in our partner community that look for sub-agents or looking for new areas to grow, especially the dominant Northeast corridor that we have, or even just the folks that are across the lakes, getting into Canada, et cetera. It sounds like a heck of a neat opportunity. Now, in dealing with Canada in the past, most of us here have dealt with those as one-off connections through aggregators or other network providers. And it's always been, we got to go to Canada. Over the years, we've finally gotten to the point where you can quote like a 10 meg circuit real time. But having a really good sales arm in Canada has definitely been lacking. What's the sales process like at Terago, and how does a CNSG partner, or what's the best pathway for a CNSG partner to interact with you guys?
So, and as we just built out the relationship with CNSG, some of the final forms are being defined, but we've got Terago has our strategy as of this year and moving forward is really focused on enabling our channel partners and building out our presence in the marketplace through our channel partners rather than through a direct force. Wow. So I'm actually heading up partner enablement here at Terago right now. Part of that onboarding that we do for any partner who's coming on board, for anyone who's got services of ours that they need to leverage, I've built a very robust sort of onboarding process, as well as an order management process where we will engage with you at the level that makes sense for you. If you just need simple transactional info, if you need simple product info, and you want to actually handle that opportunity completely by yourself, we're absolutely happy to have you do that, and we'll support you in the back end however we need. If you need access to our solution architects, as well as our order management and order entry and our survey people, you will be able to get access through them, either through a direct partner agent, myself, or through the actual end resource. So we're going to make sure that as we scale up with you, that every order and every opportunity is handled extremely smoothly. As we moved into CNSG, one of the things that's actually kept myself and probably Blake up a couple of nights is the thing that we really want to have happen, which is, well, what if we get bowled over with success and we choke the machine? So we've been planning to build out a real wide bandwidth to accept any sort of, or to take on any sort of support any sort of informational support, and any sort of actual tactical support that any of our partners need. So we're ready.
Fantastic. I mean, I've known Blake for several years, and I can tell you that that's the voice of experience there, because we have seen that problem happen where a carrier gets really, really red hot out of the gate, and then they crater because they can't support it. So knowing that you had that plan in place, again, driven by some channel veteran leadership, that's another compelling piece to the Terago puzzle.
We're definitely planning for operational scale as you guys, our partners, get ready.
In terms of scale, if I was to look at the size of Terago, how many employees do you have? What's the revenue situation like over there?
So we're a publicly traded company, and I would definitely refer you to the public information because I may be out of date. I haven't checked the latest information. We're about a $60 million revenue company. We're a very small business, small to medium business. I believe we're about 150 employees across Canada. We're primarily, our headquarters is here in Thornhill, Ontario, which is basically northern Toronto. And we've got offices across Canada, as well as our data centers here in Toronto, and a major data center presence in the interior of British Columbia, so in the Rocky Mountains, in a town called Kelowna, BC. We chose Kelowna, BC because most of the West Coast is kind of earthquake zone, as you probably all know.
Yes, I wouldn't put anything in Vancouver right there, right?
Vancouver's earthquake zone. So a few hours away on the other side of the Rockies, just a few hours drive away. It's a beautiful drive, and there's some great skiing out there as well. It's Kelowna, BC, a seismically stable region with one of the best data centers that I've ever seen. We've got a series of tier 3 data centers across the country, primarily our Kelowna and our Mississauga data centers. Which are state-of-the-art, and we offer both cloud and co-location services out of all of those locations.
Fantastic. Well, one thing that our partners always like to hear is, a case study, an example of a customer where you've been very, very successful. And again, it's so easy with you guys to go, it's in Canada, you sell Terago. But let's assume for the moment that there's a ton of Canada providers and there's a ton of competition. Tell me a story about a Terago customer that you guys made a difference for and how you did it.
I'll try to give you an example without giving away too many names.
Fair enough. We understand those NDAs.
And I don't have specific consent. But we recently actually worked with a major Canadian logistics and warehousing provider.
Oh, wow.
Here. So actually a very large company with obviously global presence as a necessity of doing warehousing and logistics that had not built into they really didn't have any resilience. They didn't have any data backup or DR for the warehousing work that they were doing. They've been doing backup on site for a long, long time. But because of the way that their business has grown and the way things have gotten more intense, they really couldn't handle any type of downtime anymore. We needed to sort of help them build out from the backup, the sort of one-off sort of backup technology that they were using in-house into a proper disaster recovery / high availability situation. So we needed to take, in particular, their package scanning application, which obviously has a lot of end devices that need to centrally aggregate in each warehouse and then aggregate up to a centralized management system. We needed to take that and build that to be disaster recovery resilient so that we would have no more than 15 minutes of downtime, or they would have no more than 15 minutes of downtime in a critical outage. This was a company that was not used to moving stuff to the cloud, to hosted services. As I said, they were doing their backups on site. Now, we're also a very well-regarded resilience managed services provider here in Canada. We do a lot of work with backup and disaster recovery, and we're a Beam and a Zerto partner up here. We provide managed services across both of those platforms. The customer was using Beam and was using Beam to back up on site. So we worked with them to make sure that the comfort level that they needed as they moved to cloud was there. What we ended up doing was we ended up taking their production environment and actually replicating it out to our cloud creating both a backup and a proper replica in our cloud in 2 locations. So in our Toronto location, as well as a second backup in our Kelowna location for disaster recovery. In addition to that, because the customer was new to doing hosted services and they needed to sort of gain a level of trust with the provider, what we did was we actually re-engineered the solution so that everything they had replicated into our cloud, and that's where it would be DR'd and reinstantiated in case of any sort of issue. Everything that we had replicated was also being re-replicated back into their old on-prem environment so that they had a backup that they could hold and touch. When people move to cloud, I sometimes joke that the thing you have to give up is the ability to hug your server.
Yes.
I jokingly say that because it's an emotional thing, but it's a real thing. I feel the same way when I gave up a lot of my infrastructure and when I really committed to cloud 10 years ago. I felt the same way. And to be honest, I'm a PC gamer. I still haven't given up my PC box. So I understand that that desire, and it's an important one, and it's an important one for businesses moving to cloud because it's a real risk that they need to manage and they need to understand. So we were able to customize the solution to address the sort of emotional / first adopter type risks that are, relevant and important to address, but also show them the way to the future, to show them how you can actually get to a much more highly available, much more cost effective, much easier to patch and migrate environment by using a robust disaster recovery as a service hosted in a cloud.
Fantastic. And really that type of story speaks volumes to our community because it's, again, going beyond just bandwidth, because it is easy to think Terago, access in Canada, but it's a full, complete solution, which is what CNSG is built upon, which is crafting that complete technology solution. And now we have a great partner in Terago that can help us do it in the Great White North. So, Nabeel, thank you so much for your time today and joining us on the Zoom. We look forward to big things from Terago, and I look forward to selling enough services to get me up to Toronto, because that's a heck of a town.
You come up in the summer and don't come up in the winter.
You got it, sir.
I'm looking forward to working with all of you out there, and I'm not a shy guy. Anybody who wants information about the Canadian marketplace, about some of the research that we've done up here, or about Terago in general, please reach out anytime. I look forward to speaking with you.
All right. Thanks again, Nabeel, and we'll see the rest of you next time on the Zoom.
Cheers.